All right.
The guy says, well, we were married 35 years.
Thank you, Pete. Welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast. This is June 9th, 2019. And today we're talking with some of the folks behind Pseudopod. So let's do introductions. Kirk, let's start with you since you just hit your mute button.
My name's Kirk Battle. I work with Alex Murray on the podcast Cthulhu in the Deep South. It's a historical fiction horror story. We've just wrapped up season 2 and are working hard at season 3. And we got the website going, actually. So CthulhuDeepSouth.com.
Is that where you can get one of those nice T-shirts?
Yes. You can get onesies, tank tops, women's, men's.
Wait, how big are the onesies? I mean, not extra large, or
it's a one size fit all thing. I hope. I'm not.
I
might need to
try that for a second.
Onesie is what you're saying.
Right. I need to call marketing. I'll get back to you.
All right, Kirk, you owe me $100. Matt.
All right. First, I would like to mention to the listeners that this is one of the very rare times Rick Lay is not on our podcast.
Yes.
Because he is at Howard Days in Plains, Texas, Cross Plains, Texas, and he is a candidate for one of the major awards at the Robert E. Howard Society. So that's why he's not here. And the main reason I'm here is I make pointed remarks about Pete's appearance.
Hey,
good.
I thought I had really good hair today. To quote
it for you, yeah, it is for you. It is good.
That wig looks great, Pete.
Oh, thank you.
Pete, you want to introduce yourself?
No, right. I'm Pete Rollick, and I'm not an alcoholic, but I'll be damn happy to try. And I write So I will tell you that a couple months ago, we had too many people at our table for bar trivia, so I took my girls and they sat at their own table, and they formed their own trivia team called Unicorn Trauma.
What?
Yeah, they are Unicorn Trauma.
They won?
I see a girls band in the future.
So just so that they're not unsupervised, I've joined Unicorn Trauma, and it has become
your life
an embarrassment to other teams at bar trivia when the 10 and 11-year-old go up and claim the first prize ticket.
That's the trauma.
That is
great.
It is trauma, and it is awful when the games master announces that everyone got the question wrong except for the 11-year-old. So, Unicorn Trauma for the win.
A lot of intense life lessons happening all at once in that one.
Yeah. Well, I'm Mike Davis. I don't know my job title actually, but I'm with Lovecraft eZine.
Did you say you run the Lovecraft eZine?
Yeah, it's a recent thing.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
I've always been interested in Fluffcraft.
I didn't say Fluffcraft.
Oh, what did you say? Because the Fluffcraft eZine would be entirely something different.
You guys talking about
Fluffcraft?
Where's it at?
I will briefly mention before we go to the nice folks from Pseudopod that each of the panelists here have books they've written or edited or so on and so forth. So please do check them out on Amazon. So we got Karen with Pseudopod and we've got Alex with Pseudopod, and we did a video test earlier today with Sean from Pseudopod and it went perfectly, but he seems to be having trouble getting in right now. So hopefully he will make it. So Karen, you want to introduce yourself and then we'll go to Alex?
Okay. I am Karen Bovenmeyer. I'm the assistant editor for Pseudopod, and I'm thrilled to be speaking with you all today.
All right, Alex.
I'm Alex Hoflick. I'm one of the editors at Pseudopod. I've been one of the editors since 2015. Been involved on and off since about 2009. Pseudopod's one of the venerable old sages of the internet since we've been around since 2006.
Since before Facebook.
Yeah.
So you guys are editors. What does that mean exactly? Do you guys have different roles, or do you guys more or less have the same role?
Well,
I stumped him with the very first question.
Yeah, Sean and I focus a lot more on matching up the right voice for the right story, wrangling all the contracts, making sure that all our paperwork is in order, and making sure that everything hits every week, getting the blog post up, getting the text of the story out there.
Right.
And things like that. But we can't function without the essential content feeding chain, which Karen is largely in charge of.
Karen, you want to talk about that?
So my job as assistant editor is to meet regularly with Sean and Alex to discuss the stories that we have that are our finalists that are, making it through. And then also you've noticed that sometimes we do really cool old reprints, or we do stuff that's just currently come out from under copyright. And so we'll discuss those as well.
Hey, let me interrupt real quick, because that fits in nicely with something I wanted to bring up. Okay. Several years ago, Footsteps Invisible by Robert A. Arthur.
Yeah.
So I assume you had something to do with that, Karen. I'm not sure how long you've been with Pseudopod, but yeah, it was written in 1940, and it was one of my favorite stories that I wrote when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Couldn't think of the author, couldn't think of the title, which makes it hard to find. But I kept Googling, I knew Footprints was somewhere in there, and finally came across the Pseudopod reading of it. So I have to thank you guys for that. It's one of my favorite stories.
It's a fantastic story, and that one Sean actually went and hunted down the rights holders, because for both of us, Robert A. Arthur he's the guy who's responsible for the 3 investigators.
Exactly. If you didn't say it, I was going to. I love that series when I was a kid.
And I've been going back through and rereading a number of them, and a lot of them hold up remarkably well.
Yeah.
It's a great introduction for spooky kids to it's the teen mystery for spooky kids.
Yeah. So Karen, I'm sorry, please continue. I wanted to throw that in there.
Well, I lean very heavily on Alex and Sean's expertise. They are both so extremely well read, and there's just such a huge wealth of knowledge there that they'll bring up connections and things that I'm not aware of. And so I really value working with them. Sorry?
I was going to say, what's an example of that, what you just said?
Well, like you guys were just talking about a story that I hadn't read or hadn't heard of, but Sean and Alex, know just that incredible, deep, rich history that I'm doing a lot of catching up on. Like this pile here are all books that I bought at StokerCon, so including a lot of really cool dark poetry.
Yeah.
But I'm a writer primarily, rather than an editor. So I do a lot of my own work, and I'm just glad that I'm part of Pseudopod, where one of my jobs is managing the people who read the first readers, our associate editors, of which we have over a dozen active ones that read the about 1,000 stories-ish that will come in when we're open. And so helping them through.
How long is the submission time usually?
Lately, we've been doing 2 weeks.
Okay, that's a lot of stories in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Alex, do you remember what our number was the last open period?
The last open period, we got about 400, but we also didn't push the button real hard on promoting that. So largely, it was the folks who were aware of when our windows are. I mean, we put it on our website where what our schedule is for the year. And this year we're trying. Last year we did month-long submission periods, and we learned that Submittable has a cap on how many stories can be received in a calendar month. So we had to make adjustments.
I suppose if you don't, as you said, push the button, then what you're doing is weeding some from the get-go, because you're getting people who are already familiar with Pseudopod, I imagine, for the most part, and what you want and what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. So anyway, yeah, Karen, please do go on.
So sometimes I do some pretty aggressive outreach to push out that we're going to be open, and other times we're kind of chill. Like this last time, only 400, only 2 weeks, and that makes things go a lot faster. We're always kind of trying to tweak things. So something I do is I help the associate editors with problems that they're having, or checking on them to see if they're getting burnt out, giving them support, running a meeting for them regularly so they can talk about the work that they're doing and kind of like overall some of the themes that they're seeing coming through the slush pile. Personally, I like them to at least have 2 people look at a story. Although, sometimes if one person reads it and is like, yeah, no, this is not horror, or, like they know it's going to not go anywhere, then it's okay to do a reject. But I generally like to have more than one person read a story, just so we have different tastes and different perspectives. Because I know how hard writers work on their stories before sending them out. So I think everybody on our team is really high on the scale of respecting the work that people do. And oftentimes our letters of rejection will say why. And so our associate editors are all trained in how to write back and say, here's what kind of we were thinking about. And the longer it takes us to respond, the better chance your story has of being purchased, because it means it's sitting in there and we're all haggling over it as to whether.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I have a question. I'm sorry. It seems to me, at least briefly looking at what you have published on Amazon, for example, it seems to be like historical fiction adventure stuff. I don't know if that's characteristic, but here you are on Pseudopod, and it's a very different genre. So I was just wondering how you got interested in editing horror.
Oh, that's a great question. I am the.
That's why Matt's here. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm the 2016 Mary Shelley awardee from the Horror Writers Association, and that was a fellowship, $2,500 fellowship that I won through applying with my own horror work. And basically, all of my short fiction and my poetry is deeply creepy, especially super dark little children that do horrible things to each other and others. And so when I met Alex at my very first StokerCon, which was right after I won the fellowship, he was like, hey, are you interested in maybe doing some work for us? And I kind of worked my way up, and I've been learning. I'm a college teacher. I work at Iowa State University. So when my editing style is kind of like my teaching style. And then I also have an MFA in popular fiction from the University of Southern Maine, where I studied under Nancy Holder, who's a multiple Bram Stoker award winner. And I ask Nancy for advice all the time. My first short story publications were horror. But yeah, you're seeing my novel, which actually did win an award as well. It won a Best Historical Award, and it won a runner-up Best LGBT Title Award. And that novel is historical, romantic, adventure, pirates, but it also has a lot of really dark themes in it, because that's just kind of that's just what happens when I write things. But yeah, again, I learned so much from Alex and Sean. I don't feel like I should be taking the spotlight here. Alex is such an expert.
Well, see, one of the things that Karen provides, and she won't say, is when Sean and Karen and I are going down and trying to make the final selections, making the hard cuts between, yes or no to purchase. Karen is a poet, and Sean and I aren't. And she has a much finer ear for the prose poetry and some of the prettier creepy things. And she provides a really nice balance for the team. And it's something that it's a taste that we didn't have adequately represented on the team. So that's something that she really brings. And looking forward to some of the really poetic things coming up in the schedule.
How did both of you become involved with Pseudopod? Because Alex, we haven't gotten much to you yet, but for example, Karen, you seem like a very busy person. So, and then you have Pseudopod on top of that. So,
oh man, yeah, it's true. But like, okay, so my history in horror was, writing horror, but I live in the Midwest, and my family would find out what I write, or my coworkers, and they'd be like, "But you're so nice. Like, how can you write this stuff?" And they're like, "Well, we don't want to read that, but whatever, knock yourself out, kid." But I didn't really know that it was horror until I was at one of my very first writing conferences, like 15 years ago, and I ran into an editor who invited me to submit to a horror anthology he was doing, and I'd never heard. It was for the Crimson Pact, and which is edited by Paul Jeunesse. And I was like, "Oh, do I write horror? I don't know." And I immediately got online and was looking around, and I did a search, and I found this podcast called Pseudopod, and I was like, "This is amazing!" And I listened to like all 200 episodes or whatever it was at that time, and I bought this thing that they had called Pod Disc, where it had all the past episodes shipped to my house on a CD, and I listened to absolutely everything from 1 on, and was like, "Oh, Poe is horror. Okay. Yeah. I do love horror. I do write horror. Oh, I've always been this, and I didn't understand." And so then I started writing stories, and that was my first story that I ever got paid a nice rate for. It was
nice.
writing for Crimson Pact. And so when I met Alex at StokerCon, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, the guy from Pseudopod's actually talking to me." And then he was like, "Would you consider maybe working for Pseudopod?" I was like, there was a lot of extremely excited jumping around. So I'm a college teacher and working full time. I train PhDs to become professors. I'm an administrator. I'm a writer trying to do my writing career, also an editor. And it's just like, how can you say no?
Yeah.
When something so amazing comes on. So
that's true.
Yeah. Alex is very kind about my crazy busy schedule.
Alex, how did you get involved with Pseudopod?
I probably have like the stubborn nepotism spot, I guess. I went to college with one of the original editors. We started in 2006. Sarah Ely was running Escape Pod, had been running it for about a year. They'd been receiving a number of horror stories, and the feedback that they were getting is like, "Yeah, stop getting your horror in my science fiction podcast." And so they were in a crit group with Ben Phillips, said, "Hey, what would you, everything you write's creepy. What would you think about editing horror podcast?" And so he and Sarah bribed Mer Lafferty with brownies at a conference and got her to come in as well. So for first year, it was Ben and Mer editing, and then when Mer stepped out, Alistair stepped in about a year later. I didn't know about this at that point in time. It took me several years because, oh yeah, my friend's doing a thing on the internet. 3 years later, I start digging into the back catalog, and I'm like, "Oh, my friend's doing an awesome thing on the internet."
Yeah.
And at that point, I just started bugging him. "Let me know if you ever need help. Let me know what I can do to step in and help out." And as his responsibilities grew and he needed to hand things off, I made sure that I was available to take things, and I just kept doing stuff. Hey, I'm going to do this thing. Tell me no if you don't want me to go that way. I'm going to go. I'm going to go try and solicit stuff from estates. Yeah, let me know if you gotta if there's any problems with that. And so I've been involved on and off since about 2009. Been editing since 2015. Sean stepped in when Ben stepped out in 2010. It's kind of the rough history.
Yeah. Well, what you just said, and this goes to either of you or both of you, however you want to answer, but about being involved with it for 3 years and thinking, wow, this is a lot huger than I thought, or where's that effect? So what I'm sure most of the people listening to this or watching this have heard of Pseudopod, but let's assume for a second that someone hasn't, and then they go to pseudopod.org, right? I have that address right, don't I?
That is correct.
Okay, good. As long as one remembers to spell Pseudopod correctly. You should probably Google Pseudopod podcast. I think it'll take you there.
Yep.
Even if you misspell it, it'll take you there. Anyway, so somebody new comes and they're like, "This is great," but oh my God, there's like all this back content of years and years and years. What do you recommend to that person? How should they start?
Well, we've got on our front page, we've got a drop down for new to Pseudopod, so that under episodes we've got a link for new listeners, and this included a list of some of the best of the episodes in the first 400, and then last year we got together to update the list from everything from episodes 400 on. So it kind of boils 13 years of content down to 20 something of our most popular episodes,
Right.
and including Hinterlands by William Gibson, and Meat by Sandra Odell, which was read by Linda Hamilton. Things like that if you jump in, you listen to some of those, if you like that, you can keep digging. If you don't, we're not for you, and there's other content out there, and we'll miss you, but if those don't do it for you, then you've made a good effort.
That may be the whitest cat I've ever seen. Except I did have a white cat when I was a kid, but I can't. It was in the prehistoric era, so I don't remember. Seem to have a lot of guests with cats. I have 4 cats, so one of my weapons when I do the podcast, because they seem very intelligent and know, especially one of them, that I'm live talking to people and I can't get onto them if they get on the counter or anything. So I've got to keep this spray bottle handy, so I can squirt them if they start like trying to eat out of the sink or something.
I was gone this weekend, so she misses me, and that's why she's climbed onto my shoulder here like my little white parrot.
Oh, well, cats are always welcome in this show. She's cute.
This is my no, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
All right, so people who are listening to this, I'm sure, are not just listeners, but writers who might want to submit someday. What is your advice to that person so that they don't make common mistakes that you see? They don't do things that really you don't think they should do, mistakes they might make. What advice do you have for them?
I think this is I'm going to pitch this one over to Karen.
Okay.
Well, okay, since I'm the creative writing teacher, that sounds good. I'm teaching a 12-week online creative writing class right now. So tip 1, take my class. No, I'm just kidding.
Not everyone is as lucky to live where you live, so I don't want to say where you live on air, but it's a great place.
Well, I'm teaching 100% online this year, so.
Oh, well, there.
Summer.
Okay, there you go. All right.
Yeah. But yeah, so what are common mistakes that people make? And they are, start your story at the beginning, but don't be boring. So like when you start writing, you'll write for a while and you'll be like interested yourself because you're getting into the character and the setting and the scene, and like you're telling the story to yourself and starting to spool it out and establish it for yourself. But that isn't necessarily intrinsically interesting to anyone else. And it's after you figure out where the conflict is happening in your story and start going that the story starts to really come alive. So I would say for some people who are pretty new, challenge yourself to cut the beginning off, or take a point that's really quite exciting on, say, paragraph 2 or page 2, and consider like what would I need to include in here if this was the actual beginning. So I'd say like sort of like flabby beginnings is one mistake.
You want to grab an editor from the get-go, you're saying?
Well,
as much as possible.
I think it's really good to have a writing group. So like you write your piece and you're like, okay, I feel like this is reasonably solid, and you send it to 4 or 5 friends who, comment on it, and then you check out the 2 friends who are like the outliers. And you do what the 3 people in the middle were saying, like, okay, this definitely, she doesn't give up. And so the first piece that I ever had published for Pseudopod, like as a writer, the first piece I ever sold to Pseudopod before I worked for them, when I was still just like a listener and still becoming like, oh, I really want to be in Pseudopod.
Right.
The first thing I sold, my writing group said, this little girl doesn't give up anything to get the creepy power that she gets. What is it that she has to give up? And then I was like, oh, she has to sacrifice her pet rabbit. So I went back and like massaged that in, and it had been rejected, I don't know, 4 or 5 times because it was missing that like really essential thing. So like when you're telling horror, like it has to still be a story and have like really good character development and complex characters, has to have a really interesting premise, something really cool and dark and creepy that you're exploring for us. It can't just be like a mood piece that you're like, because Ellen Datlow says horror is a feeling, right? Which is true. Like you can make any genre horror by the tone and style of it, but like it can't just be like a vignette. It can't be a character like remembering a story. Like you've still got to have that like something that grabs the reader. Right. And it has to, punch us in some way. And it can punch us different ways. Like we publish really different things, right? And sometimes on the edit, and you don't have to get all of us to fall in love with you. You have to get at least one of us to absolutely adore your story. And then if the other 2 are like, well, yeah, I can see how this is good because this, it has all these things. It doesn't really like do it for me, but it is like, I can see that it's really high quality and it's a really good story. And another one of us will be like, this story is amazing. And so like, you just have to get one of us to be in love with your story, and the others just to show your skill and competence.
So don't be boring. And then step 2 is kill rabbits. No, I'm kidding. I hear what you're saying. Which, if one of you has to really, really like it, Alex and Karen, what kind of horror is your favorite? For example, me, I like quiet horror, like Charles Grant type of thing.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
Well, we one of the things that we try to do is we try to show the full breadth of the genre, but from quiet horror to splatterpunk and everything in between. I've got a fairly broad taste. The Damien Angelica Walters story that was in Autumn Cthulhu, almost that was the, unfortunately we made that one second, so we ran a different one of hers.
I've heard of that book.
Yeah, it's a it's a fantastic collection and
Oh,
full
thank
of
you.
amazing authors. It's a
You know, when
serious
she sent me that
accomplishment.
story, I've said this a million times, just to deviate for a second. When she sent me that story, I told her that this, I had already accepted like 5 or 6. But she sent me that. I read it actually on my phone because I couldn't stop. Once I got past the first part, I couldn't stop reading.
Yeah,
And I said to Damien, this is exactly the kind of story I was looking for, but I didn't know it, you know? So it's a really, really great story.
yeah, and she does such a fantastic job with characters, and they all feel fully invested, fully realized,
Yeah.
and honestly, a lot of hers deal with a perspective from a woman, who's a little bit older, and that's not something that we get to see nearly enough in horror. Um, we don't have to. We don't have to. It all doesn't have to be new. It all doesn't have to be something that's never been told before. It needs to be told really well, and it's also got to be something that's going to sound good because we're audio first. So
Right.
you want something that's going to sound good and isn't going to be an incredible effort on the production end of things to deal with transitions, jumping back and forth in time in a story with a lot of flashbacks is going to be really hard to present in audio.
That's true. That's a good point. So you might have this absolutely fantastic story that doesn't really lend itself to audio very well. Yeah, I can see that.
I was going to ask, do y'all have, when you're in that conversion process to audio, what do you look for that you would maybe not mind as much in a printed story? What makes the jump to audio like extra special in a work?
Well, there's some where a good story with a fantastic narration becomes an amazing story. Um, there's some that we've had a lot of fun with where there's where while we're reading it we can go ahead and start thinking about, okay, this is a story that's got 9 different voices, but they're all told in discrete chunks, so it would be fairly easy to assemble. You can have 9 different people read their parts and then stitch it all together fairly easily. Or it's letters back and forth, so you've got two narrators each reading their pieces, and having those 2 voices working off of each other lends a really nice verisimilitude.
This makes me think of 2 things. Number one is a story by Stephen King titled N, the letter N with a period after it, which I've mentioned on this podcast many
Such
times.
a good story.
Really, really great story. And I don't know if you've heard the audio version, Alex or Karen, but it's better even than reading it.
Yeah.
And I bring this up because they've got, and of course, Stephen King thing, so yes, they can afford to do this, but they've got 3 different narrators reading this.
Yeah.
It starts off with the voice of the sister of the guy who died, and then and so it's very easy to differentiate, whereas if there was one narrator, one person reading, it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is something I never even thought of when I asked for this to be done. The first book I published, it was by Scott Thomas, called The Sea of Ash. And it's a really great story for anyone hearing this for the first time. It's a really great novella. It's one of the best things I've ever read. And that's why I wanted to publish it. But I went to Lehman Kessler of Ask Lovecraft, and I said, hey, Lehman, can I pay you to do this for me? I'd never had one thought that this was going to be hard to do. And Lehman, to his credit, never once said it was hard to do. But then when I heard his narration, where each of the 3 voices, well, 4 actually, each of the 4 voices in this novella was you could really tell the difference. And it was amazing that he did that, but it never occurred to me that that would be so hard to do.
Everybody should pay Lehman Kessler to read stuff.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, we had him on to read our Orion Gray story for Halloween last year. And
Oh yeah, Orion, sure.
so good.
Good.
Yeah. And another one that, since you brought up Stephen King, another one that comes to mind is The Colorado Kid, which is not the strongest story, but the narrator is phenomenal. And I've listened to it far more times than the story deserves, but the narration absolutely deserves that re-listen.
That's interesting. I could never get into The Colorado Kid either.
Go check out the audiobook. It's
Okay.
it's narrated by the guy who played Dale on The Walking Dead, but it was 3 or 4 times that after I listened to it where I finally was able to make that connection. He inhabits the characters so exceptionally well.
One more Stephen King audio narration was, I loved I don't know who did Mrs. Todd's Shortcut, but that was very, very well done. And Tim Curry did oh hell, Pete, what's the Lovecraftian story Stephen King wrote for the London-based Lovecraftian story? Crouch End. Crouch End, yeah. Tim Curry does a fantastic job on that one too. It's just those are a few examples of how, as you said with The Colorado Kid, that the reading of it adds an extra dimension that wasn't there before. So
Yeah. And Mrs. Todd's Shortcut is an underappreciated short story from Stephen King.
hell yeah, it's one of my favorites. Everybody should stop listening and go read it right now. No,
Yeah.
wait till
No.
Pete's got things to talk about.
No, but here's the thing. When I am the voice of reason, there is something very, very wrong in the world.
That's true, and that's why there is something wrong with this show. So, okay, but like personally, if you're just reading for yourself, but both of you, what do you gravitate to?
So I have several soft spots.
Okay.
When I see a story come through, so I don't know if you guys can see this T-shirt that I'm wearing.
Yes.
Oops. But
Yeah.
it is a pirate ship being attacked by a giant kraken, although it is an octo-kraken if you note the eyes. Anyway, and I love any kind of story that comes through that reminds me of Dungeons and Dragons, because I have been playing since I was 10. I went to my first Gen Con in 1996 and only missed one since then. And I love it when...
Wait. 90s. Wait, that may... Oh, you're young. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't feel young. My students are all a lot younger than me.
No, let me rephrase that. Christ, I'm old. How about
That's true.
That's
Here's how you know when you're old. My wife's an English teacher. When I'm at the high school with her and I can't tell if someone is a student or a teacher, that's how now I'm old, because they all look the same to me.
Yeah, the new class of freshmen that are starting this year are old enough to be my children. I don't have any children, but when I had that realization that I'm like, oh my, then I really was feeling pretty old. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't think you have anything to worry about. So what's another soft spot for you as far as what you love to read?
Okay, so I'm weird because I also have a master's in creative writing, and then I went and got my master of the fine art in the popular fiction. So I have all this training that is how to recognize stuff that's experimenting but incredibly beautiful, but walking this line between being artistic and amazing and weird. Like some cosmic horror that you read has these characters experiencing this super strange stuff that's going on, and it all comes together. So and sometimes just really beautifully, but not everybody can kind of see that. And so when I see one of those stories that comes through that just reminds me of some aspects of magic realism if you push them far over to horror. But it's just really beautiful and rich with images, and it has like strong theme, and it feels like I'm watching like cutscenes that are being put together by a master director, and results in this just kind of like beautiful thing that I'm like, oh, I'm not sure what to do with this, but man, that's gorgeous. You know, I'll fight for it. So there's that, and then also creepy children. You know, creepy children are always a good thing. And
Well, have you seen the new Hulu movie, They Come Knocking?
no, I haven't.
If
You
you like creepy children, you should watch it. It's part of the Into the Dark series on Hulu. And I don't know I think it just went live yesterday or the day before, because most of that series doesn't look interesting to me. The movie The Body was pretty good though. But I really enjoyed They Come Knocking. I've got a few quibbles, but it was pretty well done if you're into the creepy children thing, especially.
I do enjoy a good creepy child. Okay, so I've got that written down. I also enjoy mythic creatures like minotaurs and goblins and things like that that are coming into the modern world, you know, in someone's story, where you're telling a normal story and then transformations of characters into weird beasts and creatures. I might have watched Troll too many times. But, you know, like, I just like, you know, I like that. I like that stuff.
And what about you, Alex? If you're just reading for pleasure, and what do you gravitate to?
Well, thinking about stuff that makes me set other stuff down to pick it up instead. Oren Gray and Grady Hendrix are two that will make me set down whatever I'm currently working on and pick up their stuff. Unfortunately, I'm out of things from them right now, so they need to produce more. And yeah, one of the things that well, and I'm consuming Edogawa Rampo right now, which I had tragically left out of my reading, and that one's kind of blowing my mind. The Human Chair is an utterly disturbing story.
Yeah, I will read anything by Lucy Snyder. I bought some of her books.
Yes.
There. Helen Marshall. Oh, Helen Marshall.
Yes.
Oh. So good. I'm just looking at my stash from StokerCon over here, and like, definitely. I think it was The Hanging Tree on Tor.com was the first thing I read by Helen Marshall, and she just blew my socks off. Super awesome story there, and it's dark and weird, but it's fantasy. And I'm gonna look something up while Alex talks some more about what he likes. There's one that was on Podcastle that was so good I thought I was gonna die, and it was horror.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm really looking forward to digging into Paul Tremblay's collection coming out in a month. That one I expect to be fantastic. I'm in a horror book club, and so the kind of doing history and evolution of that, and the Head Full of Ghosts is like, oh, this is exactly the reason why we're doing this, because we had already done The Exorcist, we had already done Rosemary's Baby, and we had already done We've Always Lived in the Castle. And so it's like, oh, this is everything coming together on, you know, we can draw a straight line to this, but none of it is derivative. And those are fantastic.
That's a great novel. I like Paul's Disappearance at Devil's Rock even more.
Oh, that is on the to-do list.
Yeah, and if you're a fan of Paul, which sounds like you are, 2 weeks from now, I believe it is, Paul Tremblay, Laird Barron, and John Langan are going to be on the show.
Excellent.
And basically, I'm just going to say, what do you guys want to talk about, and then just kind of not say much if possible. You know,
try and prompt them. Yeah,
I don't know if they need to be prompted. I don't know. We'll see. Probably not.
Yeah, all three of them produce really phenomenal work. I just finished Saphira and Other Betrayals by Langen. And,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Bor Ursus, it was, that one kind of knocked my socks off because I like thin places and things stepping through from the other side and being menacing. It also helped that I was reading it yesterday during the middle of a rainstorm. And the thing that creates the thin places are the massive storms up in the mountains of the Appalachians. So that helped a bunch.
Yeah. Yeah. Thin places like Crouch End again, for example.
Yes. Yeah. That exceptionally fun story, and I need to hunt down Tim Curry's narration of that.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, so Karen, what were you looking up?
So I forgot to mention also Kelly Link. I love to read Kelly Link.
Yes.
Specialist Hat we ran. But the one that I was thinking of is, her name is Thorea Dyer, and the book is called Crossroads of Canopy. And they ran like the first chapter of it on Podcastle. Podcastle 369, The Chimney Borer and the Tanner, Thorea Dyer. And it is dark as all get out. I couldn't believe it was on Podcastle. I was like, whoa, dang. And it was just so twisted, and I really, 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 really enjoyed that.
Have you guys ever accepted a story for Pseudopod that not much happened, but it was really engaging? Like it was like all mood and very little changed in the story. Like for example, I'm thinking of R.H. Barlow's and H.P. Lovecraft's The Night Ocean. Really atmospheric story, but not a lot really happens, but yet you're really interested in the story.
Sean says In Plain Air.
Yeah, and that was the first one that popped to mind for me as well. That one it's one of the quietest stories that we've run.
I should mention while you're hunting that Sean Garrett is a huge part of Pseudopod, and he's having technical difficulties that he didn't have in the video test. I don't know, sometimes that happens, but he's with us even though you can't hear him. So glad you're here, Sean. Sorry you're having problems.
It's funny, Mike, because we talk about quiet horror.
Yeah.
And I've only accomplished what I wanted to do with a couple quiet stories. I found that writing quiet horror stories is really, really hard.
It is, yeah.
I'm not a big fan of splatterpunk and the gross out, but most of my work does include a bit of the visual horror. It's only a few pieces where I've tried to do that without going into that and had any real success. So when we talk about adapting quiet horror stories, it's really interesting to me, and I really respect the authors that are able to pull it off and the narrators who are able to carry off that tone properly.
Yeah, and it's tough to maintain the tension while still keeping most of the things off screen.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's what is it? Barbarian Sound Studio.
Oh God, yeah, what a great movie.
Is really masterful at doing that. And sometimes I think, how did they pull this off?
Yeah.
But they did.
Yeah.
And it's a very quiet horror movie, almost a self-apocalyptic horror story.
Anybody listening who has not seen Bavarian Sound Studio should definitely watch it. Yeah. And you guys did mention, I'm just going to throw this out there, to do with what you want. And I know Sean's listening too, but you said occasionally you get something that's copyrights expired and everything. I'll throw The Night Ocean out there for possible consideration. So anyway.
Is that Hodgson?
It's The Night Ocean, written by Lovecraft and R.H. Barlow.
Oh, okay.
I should also plug that there was like a mod. Did y'all ever read the story The Night Ocean that's about the guy researching the Barlow story and he ends up going insane?
You talking about that recent novel of a couple of years ago?
Yeah. I finished that up a few well, just in case any listeners get confused, one is like very modern and it's good, but it is uncomfortable and dark at a lot of times. I ended up liking it a lot, but it's very off-putting in the early sections. But the one you're talking about is like this writer's like stuck on an island staring at the ocean.
He's a painter, but yeah, exactly. He's going down there for vacation. You can read R.H. Barlow's and H.P. Lovecraft's The Night Ocean for free online. So that's the easy way to do it.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
So yeah.
And we've got one of the incredible finds that we've got coming up in a week or two, actually, is the story that Freaks, the pre-code film, was based on, just hit public domain this year. And so we've got that one coming up. That was an interesting research exercise. And we're looking at some of the stuff that's coming into the public domain next year and the year after to kind of load things up.
Karen, feel free to add to this, but I think you've mentioned quite a few writers that you like to read today and that you're also influenced by. Alex, who else is writing horror today that you're a fan of? You mentioned Oren Gray, for example.
Well, Oren Gray and Grady Hendrix, your three guests coming up in a couple of weeks. All three of them are fantastic. Yeah. Shirley, Karen just mentioned Shirley Jackson over in chat, and I am reluctant to go digging deeper into her catalog to get stuff that's farther away from her horror. I'm not sure how much I've consumed all of the best. I'm not sure how deep I want to go away from that. And AC Wise is
Sure.
Another author that produces amazing stuff right now.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I'm gonna wind up leaving a whole bunch of folks'
Yeah.
works that I really love off because
some writers gonna be listening to this and you go, damn it, I thought Alex liked me.
Yeah. Christy DeMeester is another one who really does an approach from the quiet side very nicely, and she makes very lyrical sort of stories.
Do you guys have a couple of favorites from that huge, the plethora of past years of audio? Pseudopod, one or two that come to mind that are your favorites? Is that it's just too much?
Exceptionally proud of the Screwfly Solution by James Tiptree Jr. That turned that's one that broke apart really nicely into multiple narrators for all the different voices in there, for the news clips, for the letters from the wife, who's slowly revealing the breakdown of the world. That was the first story in ages that actually gave me nightmares while I was hunting the rights down, and the estate is a pleasure to work with, which is really nice.
I'll throw in real quick and let you continue. Sean just wrote, I really enjoyed doing Christmas Present by Ramsey Campbell. So
yeah. And I think we've run Ramsey Campbell is a master of the short form, and we could run a Ramsey story every week for a year and not tread the same ground again.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. Thank you. Karen reminded me of one of the ones that I had absolutely left off is Livia Llewellyn. She is exceptionally disturbing and a wonderful human being. Had the pleasure to run into her about a year ago, and yeah, I'm excited for some of her projects that are coming up this year.
Yeah, great writer, great person, and actually, she was one of our panelists for a year or two until she got overwhelmed with writing, which is a good thing. So yeah, she's great.
I love her stories.
Yeah.
How long? How long?
Christine Lucas.
Sorry.
A newcomer is Christine Lucas, and I have really been enjoying her stories. So before I became assistant editor for Pseudopod, I had a little stint as a guest editor for an Artemis Rising event, and she sent me a story that had a pirate ship in it. But it had, cursed weapons and sailors and, undead mermaids, and it was all full of all of the awesome everything. And she just sent us another story recently, and like her work is, keep an eye out for her. She is about to be, she's definitely on my watch this person and what they're writing list.
When is your next submission opening? Submissions, or do you know yet?
It is July, I believe. One moment.
Frantically writing down.
July 19th through the 28th, so the end of July.
19th through 28th.
Yep.
Okay, so.
And that is conveniently on our website under submissions, and one of the options on that menu is schedule. We try and have the calendar year kind of planned out so that we manage people's expectations. There's transparency helps everybody.
Someone submits this July. When should they expect to hear back? Typically, you mentioned, Karen, that the longer they don't hear back, the better chances they have that their stories probably going to be accepted. So, but bearing that in mind, what's the typical response?
We're fighting over it still.
Right.
So we try to have an answer back within 6 weeks when we were doing the 1 month opening. I don't know that we really changed or adjusted that for our 2 week thing that we do now, but that's my goal. Our goal is to get word back to you within 6 weeks. Does that sound right, Alex?
Yeah, if we haven't gotten back in 30 days, there's absolutely no harm in reaching out to us and saying, hey, am I still in queue? And we try to have the associates, when they send it up to us, to the editors, to send a note letting them know, hey, you made it past first round, you're up in the second round. And again, we try and have that same 4 to 6 weeks when it gets to us, although we're a little bit slower because we're it's not just syncing up schedules, but it's also talking about, well, is this good with edits, or are we good with it as it is, or is it a revise and resubmit and then contract, or is it send them a whole bunch of edits and then ask them to send something back, or is this a close but no cigar? And making the hard choices. Also, we've only got 52 slots a year, and when you reduce that by a certain percentage we want to show people that horror isn't just a new thing that Stephen King created. This is something that's been going on for ages. We like to be able to go back and show people stuff that has been largely forgotten by time, like an Everett Worrell story that we ran. She was in Weird Tales probably more than any other author for a much longer period of time, and nobody knows who she is. So there's some things that we try to so that, but that cuts down on our slots even more. So it's really tough to kind of cut down on that 40-45 slots that we have a year that are open.
So if you get a close but no cigar from us, your story was really good to have gotten that far, and so you should be like patting yourself on the back and doing a little dance.
So the month they can ping you after about a month, and that's acceptable. I mean, you can tell you've got a new writer when they send you a story, and then they're emailing you 3 days later wanting to know what you thought. You know, so. That said, I'm working on Autumn Cthulhu now, Autumn Cthulhu 2, excuse me, and a couple other minor things, and I've been so horrible because I don't want to say all this stuff and then say, oh, I'm really good at it. I used to be really good at it, and then dealing with some family stuff, some medical stuff, and I had to put Autumn Cthulhu 2 on hold. So I need to email all those guys and remind them that the project's on, but it's just really delayed. But yeah. What are there any questions or things that maybe I haven't thought to ask about Pseudopod that you'd like to mention?
Sean's underscoring something in the chat here.
Okay.
He says, sometimes if you get a close but no cigar, it's because it's a great story and we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to adapt it to audio. And then we're like, it's not really going to work. Right. But it could be a totally awesome story that we all love, just not really for audio.
There's just so many times in whatever publication a story is rejected, and it's not because it's a bad story, it's because it doesn't fit for one reason or another.
Yeah. It pained me when I was editing a book a couple years ago. Every story I got was set in the modern setting, and those 8 stories flowed really, really well together. And one story came out, it was a pure fantasy story. And I just could not work it into the table of contents without breaking the sort of setting that was being created. And it really pained me to have to reject it.
I saw where Sean Garrett was. Is he referencing Henry James is in like Tess of the D'Urbervilles, Henry James?
I don't know, but I'll say something about Robert Aikman.
Yeah,
I recently got a Robert Aikman audiobook on Audible. And Sean's exactly right. He writes good examples of great authors that are difficult for audio. Henry James and Robert Aikman. So I'm listening to this. I think I posted on Twitter or Facebook that I was listening to this at night in bed. And the next morning I see this reply from someone saying, how can you listen to Robert Aikman on audio? It's hard enough to follow him when you're reading. So.
I cruise a lot of LibriVox, and I'm always reading stuff from the 1870s and 80s, and it really is just a different approach to language and structuring thoughts. When you start getting into old enough books that it wasn't intended to be read aloud, and it's just not going to click, and it's just funny how much you can see that in older text. It'll give you a real awareness for when you're writing your own stuff, how to make it pop more. Because you'll be like, do I need a whole paragraph describing a building? Maybe not, things of that nature.
Yeah, and that's a good point for telling new authors, read your story aloud and see how it sounds to you before you send it to us. And if you just can't stomach reading it aloud, have your Kindle read it aloud to you, or have your iPhone read it aloud to you. So you can, even though that's a weird computer voice, you can still, if it's a really good story, it's gonna come alive regardless.
Or it'll sound like Ethan Frome, and it'll just slit your throat.
I can't let this interview pass without just saying something about narrators. And I don't know how many of your narrators will watch or listen to this in the future, but I really have a great respect for narrators because I tried it once or twice, and I've been told I have a good voice. Maybe I do for podcasts. I don't know. I think everybody doesn't like their voice, and I don't like mine. But they say, you'd be a great narrator. And I'm like, no, this is way more difficult than it looks like, especially when you're comparing yourself to, guys like Lehman Kessler, or I'll throw out
Anson Mount, or Andrew Lehman from the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society.
Yeah, John Paget is another one. Really talented writer and also really talented narrator.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
and a really great guy too.
Thank you for bringing up another one that I left off of my list. Because John Paget's another one that I will grab his stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like, I don't have new Legati to read, and so.
What was the name of his collection? You guys remember?
The Secret of Ventriloquism.
He sends me an autographed copy, and my mind goes blank at the name. I'm sorry, John.
It's
you know how my brain is. It's what?
The Secret of Ventriloquism.
Yes, Secret of Ventriloquism. Man, that is one disturbing collection.
Yeah, and
John's
the magazine.
really talented.
Yeah, the magazine that he's editing right now is also really fantastic, and I can almost hear Sean.
Vesterian, I believe, is the name of his magazine.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
Hey, Sean.
Oh, hold on a moment.
And something that I told John how much I love the collection, and something that he said to me that I think every writer should bear in mind, especially beginning writers, is that he goes, Mike, you would not believe how many years I've been working on this and how many times I have edited it and re-edited it, and it must be 100 times and years. And I forget which author who said that, thank God that the public only sees the finished version, but it's a really good illustration that writing is rewriting. It's you get that first draft down, and then you edit, and then you edit some more till it's where it needs to be. So, okay, Sean, you want to throw anything in since we're almost done?
I don't know. How loud am I? I don't hear myself in the headphones.
You're fine.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Well, this is about par for the course for my life in the sense of just coming in at the end. I missed so much at the beginning. I really only got in at the halfway point, but I guess thank you all for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome.
I look forward to listening to the podcast and hearing the first half of everything that I didn't hear while I was trying to get the microphone.
Before I let you guys go, though, Sean, why don't you tell us what you do for Pseudopod as opposed to what these two do?
You're a sound and internet engineer, right?
What's that?
You're the sound and internet engineer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm the guy that can't get microphones to work. I was originally editor, and then we brought Alex on, and then Karen. So now they do a lot of the stuff that I God bless them for doing it. Alex is really, really good with numbers and computer stuff, and I'm not. I may be the oldest person in this fake room, he says, making air quotes, even though you can't see me. I struggle a lot with technology. Things that work one day, ta-da, don't work a couple of hours later.
Right.
Alex is really good at all of that. And we all bring our various backgrounds. I read a lot. In the sense of my day job, I'm an editor for Wildside Press, and then on my own, I have this insane reading list of things that I hope to read before I die, which I will never complete. But so a lot of times, and I love short fiction specifically. So a lot of times, what you can say, what do I bring? Well, often I just bring in these odd stories that I stumble over. We have a few coming this summer. And
Sean's forgotten more about horror and all of its aspects, including, comics and the hosts and, stuff in television than a lot of us know.
Yeah, I particularly love the audio form for horror. Ever since I was a little kid, I used to listen to CBS Radio Mystery Theater.
Same here.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so that kind of set the tone. And so in the 80s, back before the internet made it free for everybody, I would spend hundreds of dollars on audio cassettes of old time radio shows, and then archive.org came on and made me a fool. But yeah, I've listened to lots and lots and lots of things, and in terms of
Hiram was not very happy about that, by the way, about all those getting online.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, but you're fighting. You're fighting. You can't fight that. Yeah. Plus, quite frankly, then you'll just be forgotten. I mean, there are so many great shows that really we only know of because people thought to tape them and trade tapes, and the other things that just have disappeared off the, forever because nobody taped them, so.
One of the cool things about that show is that E.G. Marshall does an intro and an outro for each commercial, not as well as the whole story.
Yeah, he does a great job hosting it. It's a really uneven show, and part of that might be the fact that it was 7 days a week.
That's unbelievable.
For almost a decade, I think. And
it was from 1974 to 1982. Yeah.
Yeah, and quite frankly, they also had a long slot, right? They were an hour-long slot, and so you can really feel them stretching a lot of those, But it's interesting to hear the adaptations from time to time, and every once in a while there'll be just a very inventive, new one that they've come up with. But it is a mixed bag of a show. But yeah, so I've just been listening to this stuff and thinking about it in audio for a very long time. So that's kind of what I bring to the show, I guess, in a sense, is that. And I love short fiction. I love short horror fiction, but I also just love fiction of almost all kinds. So, I'm always kind of, finding something new and trying to stretch our parameters that may have been covered in the first 30 minutes. But that's one of the things I'm proudest of, is that I like to think that we're a show that's unlike any other horror fiction podcast. Everybody has their little niche, and that's great. But I'm proud of the fact that we present the range of stuff that we do, even if that kind of means that occasionally, and people will come to it and just be like, "What's this?" and turn it off.
Yeah.
But I often say, give us 4 episodes, give us a month, give us 4 episodes. And unless it's a showcase, we're likely to hit something that you like. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Not every story is going to hit. No one is going to like every single story, but every single story is somebody's favorite. I mean, even the story, the 1 or 2 stories in our back catalog that I think are objectively bad. I've had people come up and say, that one right there is my absolute favorite. And I just keep my mouth shut and I
smile and nod.
Yeah.
Like I said, you just have to have one of us that loves the story, and the other two are like, it's competent, but it's not my favorite.
Well, before I let you guys go, I think I'd be remiss to not mention half the reason why I still sometimes listen to Mystery Theater is E.G. Marshall's intros and outros. Yeah. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Alistair Stewart. I have his name right? Pronounced right?
Yep.
He does the intros and outros for your show. I believe you told me, Alex, that he started off doing that
in 2007.
And now he owns the place. Yep. So
yeah, he liked it so much that he bought the company.
And that's how he became a billionaire.
So I had just one more conversation I want to have, or one more thing that I want to talk to Sean about.
Okay.
because Sean, we can't see you,
That's right.
but you have an image up.
Oh yes, that
Wait.
Okay. I'll let you guess.
It's not Zacharelli.
No,
It is Dr. Shock.
that is correct. Yes.
He was my insurance salesman as a kid.
Joe's a Whizlack or something like that.
Yep.
I'm never sure how to say it.
No idea what you two are talking about.
What? Was he really your insurance salesman?
Yeah, he was my parents' insurance salesman.
Oh
Wow.
my gosh.
And he used to come to the house. And
Oh wow!
So you're a Philly area native then?
I grew up
Philadelphia?
in North Hills in Montgomery County.
There you go. Okay.
And
Before he retired to Florida, where he resides now in a very rich area. Goes fishing, owns a boat.
no, these
No.
are all lies. They're all.
All right. Well, let me apologize for anything that I didn't ask, but I really appreciate the three of you being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yes,
Karen,
thank
Sean,
you.
Thank you.
I would just be remiss in asking in case, and unless it was done again in the first 30 at the top.
Sure.
But just pointing out that people that like the show and like all the kind of variety of stuff that we put up, really should look at subscribing, because we have extra episodes that we make available to people, only to people that subscribe, and you know, a lot of it is public domain stuff, but the truth is that it's easier to wrangle for rights for stories if we can tell them, well, only X amount of people will have access to it, you know, and it won't just be out on the internet forever. So, you know, keep that in mind. Anybody that's listening, if you're not a subscriber, you're missing. Gosh, how many extrusions do we have at this point, Alex?
Well, they're all told, we've got about another 25 stories over there for just Pseudopod. So there's 25 more horror stories out there waiting.
Yeah.
Well, if you can't spell Pseudopod, just get close and Google Pseudopod podcast, and you'll find it. There's a lot of excellent stories on there. So, guys, thanks for talking with us today. Really appreciate it. You being
No
on the show.
problem. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks. Take care.
You too. All right. I have not one, not two, but three Pete Rollick quotes from Facebook that we need to talk about here. The first one is...
Wait, Pete, go get another glass of sangria.
Yeah, you better. The first one is, anybody want me to come rant about stuff? I have new projects to promote. So
This is true.
yeah, you do. And then in the new Godzilla movie, something large, dangerous, and alien is frozen in the ice in Antarctica. I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
Monarch calls this Outpost 32. Anyone remember what was frozen in the ice Outpost 31?
So I thought that was a nice little. I thought it was a nice nod. At least I think it's a nod.
I haven't seen the movie yet. So
well, okay.
Is it good? Should people watch it?
I enjoyed it. It's a Godzilla film.
That's true.
It's
Langan's probably seen it 5 times by now.
I'm sorry. I never really watched Godzilla movies for the human character buildup.
Wait, Pete. The character development in Shin Godzilla is, it's epic.
No.
It's Godzilla versus the Parliamentary Subcommittee.
Yeah. So I'm not. Look, one of the problems I had with the Matthew Broderick Godzilla film was that there was too much Matthew Broderick and not enough Godzilla.
Bueller.
I'm sorry.
Bueller.
I did not go to see a Godzilla film to watch Matthew Broderick on screen win back the love of his life. I went to see Godzilla.
Is this a pure monster fest, or is this Lovecraftian in any way, or is it just a bunch of big monsters?
It is a bunch of big monsters.
Big fucking monsters.
Big monsters.
All right.
Okay, now wait, Mike. It's
Yes.
completely unrelated.
Of course it is.
You can, of course it is. Well, I got to talk. You can argue that the miniseries Chernobyl is very
Oh my God!
Lovecraft.
Again with the Chernobyl. Jesus,
It's
I'm gonna
really-
watch it. Where is this on HBO? There's some reason I
No.
haven't
Yeah.
watched it yet.
Yeah.
It
Is
is.
it?
It's utterly compelling.
It is on
But here
HBO.
it is. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It's the best TV I've ever seen ever.
I will watch it. I'm
Okay.
actually I'm kidding.
But-
I am
but it's
glad
like,
that you
okay,
reminded me.
You have these normal people who are suddenly confronted with something completely beyond their understanding that doesn't care anything about them.
Right.
It's just,
Yeah.
And there's character development.
there is.
But okay, but to go back to Godzilla, so
Oh.
in the movie, there's various bases around the world, and for one reason or another, they call them outposts. There's no explanation of why they're called outposts.
Sounds cool.
Yeah,
Why?
and there happen to be at least 32 of them. And Outpost 32 is in Antarctica, and beneath Outpost 32 is something very large and alien and dangerous encased in ice.
Well, Superman's Fortress of Solitude is outpost number 1. I'm guessing.
Okay.
In the Arctic. Anyway.
I believe it's Doc Samson. No, Doc Savage's Outpost number 1.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, Outpost 31 is from the film The Thing by John Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something large and dangerous in the ice. And
Right. So it's obviously that's pretty neat.
I think it's a neat little parallel, and it would not surprise me if it was done on purpose.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
Just as a nod.
Yeah. Yeah, I love stuff like that.
And it's just, it's not technically a tie-in, but for people who watch horror films, it's a nice little Easter egg. Let's call it that.
All right.
Oh, don't do the third one. Okay, go ahead.
The third one is, for most of my life, this is a Pete Rollick quote.
Oh, okay, yeah.
For most of my life, superhero films weren't good, but I'll admit that I tested up. What does that mean?
Teared up.
Oh, you teared up. I was wondering, is this something that everybody knows about but me? That's what I was wondering. But I'll admit that I teared up at the opening of Watchmen, that Black Panther and the Dark Knight trilogy are very good cinema. You're right, except for the last Dark Knight movie. That Deadpool was funny as hell, but the X-Men and Fantastic Four franchises have been run into the ground. They're doing more damage to the property than good. That's how I'm.
Have any of y'all seen?
When you typed it.
I heard Dark Phoenix had the worst opening box office of a superhero movie.
I thought it looked.
That's
good.
a stiff
trailer looked
competition.
good, but
I think it looks horrendous. Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique looks like crap.
I can't stand Jennifer Lawrence. Joe Pulver loves the hell out of her. I'm like, why?
Rebecca Romaine was awesome.
Yeah.
As Mystique.
Yeah.
Jennifer Lawrence looks
like a teenager with an attitude that's blue.
Yeah. There's nothing about Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique that makes me say stay away.
Yeah.
She would be better off as a Banff doll.
Well, the trailer for Dark Phoenix looked good. So has anybody seen the movie?
The trailer for Dark Phoenix looks like crap.
Oh, you think it looks like crap? Okay, well, you're probably right. Yeah.
You're just,
Tommy Bennett on the live chat says 198,000 viewers on IMDb gave Chernobyl 9.7 out of 10.
Yeah,
by the way,
it has a better rating than Game of Thrones.
Oh, I know a funny. You want to talk about being a writer and sticking with it? Look up the IMDb credit for the writer for Chernobyl. That guy had a long road before he got to pin that masterpiece.
Really?
Yeah, just hold on.
There's a lesson there somewhere. I don't know what it is, but there's a lesson.
It means
just
don't give up.
Like,
no, I know.
Okay, the next X-Men movie, they should attack Chernobyl. Chernobyl should be a living creature.
That's right.
Actually, there is that is a story in the X-Men archives.
Oh my God!
Krakoa, the living island, was a radioactive island that was alive. It was a mutant.
I mean, Dark Phoenix was always one of those plot lines that sort of involves me caring about Jean Grey and Cyclops. And that's uphill.
And
I don't really, yeah.
now,
Neither
All
of them have ever resonated with me throughout the entire cinema universe of X-Men.
you know, Scott Summers, or as he was called several times in several different versions, Slim.
Slim?
He was called Slim Summers.
I dream of the day that someone calls me Slim again.
You know,
You're too skinny, Mike. You get some
You're
meat on
just-
those bones.
Mike, you're just an E short, so no to keep working.
Right.
Yeah.
I need to grow taller.
Slim Summers was like the hero with the biggest stick up his ass.
All right.
Okay.
Real quick, Strange Company.
Strange Company. Ooh, Strange
By Pete
Company
Rawley.
comes out like in 7 days. This time next week, it will be out.
Dun dun dun.
From Hinema and Gahana and Hima Press, and I am just overwhelmed with this book. What? Go ahead.
I was gonna supply the words for you. You said overwhelmed with. I was gonna say sadness or
I'm overwhelmed with joy at this
regret.
book. Yeah, well, regret. Yeah, I have many regrets. Most of them are ever joining this show.
He says as he's talking about his book. All right, what's the book about?
The book, it's about 150 pages.
All right, well,
Yep.
moving on.
Yeah,
Oh, wait. Is there going to be a hardcover?
I believe the hardcover was Kickstarter exclusive.
I don't even know
So
if I got that.
you are screwed.
Yes,
Yeah.
I am.
All right, 7 days from now, roughly,
7 days from now, and the
or
book is
exactly.
divided.
This is a Sunday.
This is a Sunday. Yes, it's supposed to be out on the 16th, which means knowing Amazon, you will probably have it in your box on the 16th. But
Sure, if you pre-order the Kindle, there's a Kindle version and a paperback,
Yep.
right?
yes,
Okay. Now, what's a quick spoiler-free synopsis?
spoiler-free synopsis. This collects some of the more remote stories that's hard for
Oh,
people to
right.
find.
It's a collection. I'm sorry.
The collection of short stories. It's divided into 3 parts. It's mainstream mythos, other horrors, and alternate mythos. So the mainstream stuff is stuff that are really just, I consider, central to my take on the Cthulhu mythos.
hmm
The alternate mythos are stories that I wrote that deviate from that and include stories like The Strange Company, The Battle of Arkham, Looking for Joey Shoggoth, The Gumdrop Apocalypse. So this book is actually going to include a story called The Dead Provide, which I wrote in the 90s and have sold 4 times.
Oh, wow. That's
And
like your study in Emerald.
yeah, no, but The Dead Provide has never seen publication until last year, when it was published in Hymnum, Hymnum magazine, and then it's going to be in this anthology. But yeah, it was actually a project killer. Magazines and anthologies would go out of business before they published the story.
So I should not pony up my money for the Strange Company yet, is what you're saying.
No, I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure it's coming out. The
Okay.
story-
I'm
yeah.
sure it is. All right, look, all kidding aside,
Yes.
Pete is one of the real
Sure.
experts out there. Rick Lay, Matthew Carpenter, others that aren't on this show, but you're talking about really.
That's
I
a
didn't,
nice,
mean that, I didn't mean that the way
recovery
it came
there.
out.
Yeah, you didn't mean it, but you said it.
It's that other person's.
My point is that when Pete Rawlick, all kidding aside, when Pete Rawlick talks about the mythos, he really knows what he's fucking talking about. He's got all of this shit in his head, and I really can't see why any Lovecraftian, you should have The Strange Company on your shelf.
Look, I would buy it if I were not me, and this book came out. I would buy it just for the short story Stuart Bear Deanimator.
Proud of that one.
Yeah, I am. I'm really proud of Stuart Bear Deanimator because it's a completely different take on the Herbert West mythos, and I really love it.
Okay.
But yeah,
Another
And
one
Matt,
that
Matt's smirking over there. What's
No, what I got a copy ordered in paperback. It'll come
Okay.
in next week, I guess.
I keep
Yeah.
looking for my autograph copy, but it's
So wait, I'm looking
showing
for
up.
this on Amazon. I see the lurking chronology. What am I looking for, Pete?
The Strange Company?
The Strange Company.
Let's see.
Is it available for pre-order?
It should be. I can
Yeah,
pre-order.
I ordered it.
Well, let me just say, if
I
you are
got
going
it.
to get this book, you're listening and you are going to get this book, and you're listening to this before June 16th, 2019, do pre-order it. That really helps the publishers and the authors get a good feel for how the book's going to do. Pre-ordering is always good if you can do it.
All right, and I'll tell you what. If you guys, if oh, I can't believe I'm going to do this, but if somebody Facebook messages me after they bought the book and wants an autographed book plate, I'll figure out how to get you one.
Jesus, you're going to get like 1 million Facebook messages.
Nah, just it's just between us.
Okay, no one's listening. All right.
All right. So
Also,
again, sidebar. Hey, Pete,
Yeah.
you have said that you wanted to kind of know sort of what's in my library. You have, and I am putting it up in slow motion. Have you seen? I'm
very,
sort
very
of putting up a
organized there,
Lovecraftian
yeah.
book each day.
Yes,
That's
you know what? I look forward to that.
That's a deep biopsy of my library. At least for
you don't miss a
Lovecraft.
day either.
You don't miss it, and I really look forward to that because it's like, oh, and once or twice something has come up that's like, do I have that?
For those who don't know what we're talking about, Matt has been posting a Lovecraftian book a day on the Lovecraft eZine message board, which is a Facebook group, and the HP Lovecraft Historical Society too, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. William Meikle also has a new book out. It's called Into the Black: Tales of Lovecraftian Terror. It's available in paperback and Kindle, and it's on Kindle Unlimited if you're a Kindle Unlimited subscriber. You can read it without paying any extra money. So there's that. There's two Lovecraftian books coming out. One just came out, and one's about to come out. I cannot even believe I'm going to bring this up.
Well, then don't.
God help me. But Comixology, which is digital comics for those of us who live in small towns, it's the way we get our comics when we can afford them. Anyway, the graphic novel comic version of A Study in Emerald by Neil Gaiman is half off this weekend. So basically, if you're listening to this after June the 9th of 2019, I don't think it's going to be half off. But if you're listening live or later tonight, it's only $4.99 as opposed to $9.99.
You could get another copy, Mike.
I am not even going to get that copy. It's a great book. I'm tired of it. God damn it, I'm tired of it.
Yeah, we talked about this the other night. That when it came out, it was great and groundbreaking. And I know Neil. I've met Neil, and we've talked a couple times, and it's a good story. I love the work.
Did you tell him that I asked him to stop reprinting it?
Well,
Didn't come up. I bet it didn't come up.
Okay. You know the person who wrote "I Want a Hippopotamus for Christmas"? That was the song that basically paid for their kids' college,
right,
in their house,
right.
Not because of a huge influx of cash, but because it steadily gave them an income from royalties for millennia. It's kind of hard, even for an artist who only does like one thing. They need to make their money.
So, if I remember correctly, the guy who directed the original film for MASH,
Robert Altman?
Yeah, his son wrote the lyrics for the song.
Suicide is Painless?
Yes. And they made more money off the song lyrics than they made off the film.
Wow.
So Pete, who do we know? Like Reber Clark, did he like put some of your prose to music?
You know, so I will tell you that there's a poem that I wrote in college that my roommate recorded on his Society for Creative Anachronism music album, and he had that story, that song. I would pirate it like 1,000 times.
That's
And
a lot of money people owe you.
I didn't get to publish that story until like that poem until like 5 years ago. So yeah, things happen.
You know that James Bond movie, that scene where something about he's with the bad guys and he says something about his brother, and one of the henchmen goes, "I got a brother," and Bond says, "Small world." With that in mind, it's great. It's the best line in all the Bond movies.
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
That's just the most famous one.
Yeah, I wrote this poem once.
Fight me.
Huh? That I'm not gonna.
Is it pick on Pete night?
I know this is real. I wrote this poem years ago, and my wife. I didn't even know this. My wife sent it into this huge website at the time. Huh? It was not. It was not pornography. Let me just make that clear. And she didn't even tell me that she'd entered it until she told me I won. I won 100, number one out of thousands submitted, and I won one of the best prizes you can get, which is $100 gift card to Barnes and Noble. So that was pretty nice.
Aren't they going out of it? Oh no, they got bought. That's right.
It was a romantic poem, but all right. I don't see very many movies in the theater. Brightburn. I went and saw it in the theater with.
What do you think?
Wait to rent it. Better yet, wait till it's on Netflix. If you've seen the trailer, you've seen the movie. The little Superman, the little Superboy kid goes evil. That's it. That's all you need to know. It wasn't done very well. So
it's like Dark Phoenix, right? Like you've kind of that's it. You've got it.
yeah. You don't need to see the movie. You saw the trailer. Anyone hear about a movie that's just hit the theaters called Midsummer or I don't know if I'm saying this right. Midsummer.
Oh, is that the
Midsummer Murders?
No, it's not Midsummer Murders.
No, it's spelled Midsommer. Here's the synopsis. This is what caught my eye. A couple traveled to Sweden to visit their friend's rural town.
I've seen that trailer. I want to see that movie.
For its fabled Midsummer Festival. But I haven't even seen the trailer yet, so I'm looking forward to doing that.
The trailer's interesting, Mike. It looks very strange and creepy. I don't know if it's going to be any good, but the trailer is intriguing.
It's like you took your girlfriend to Summer Isle to break up with her.
Right. A couple traveled to Sweden to visit their friend's rural hometown for its favored Midsummer Festival, but what begins as an idyllic retreat quickly devolves into an increasingly violent and bizarre competition at the hands of a pagan cult. And this came to my attention because Jordan Peele was raving about it. Said it was just one of the best movies he's ever seen or something like that.
It's Ari Aster, right? It's the Hereditary guy.
Yeah, which, the first 45 minutes of that film were terrifying. And
yeah, I don't know why everyone's so hot on Hereditary. I was just sort of left me.
If it's already out, that means it's never freaking coming to Peoria.
Well, we've all got our various problems. I'm sorry you have to deal with that.
What do you call people who live in Peoria? Let's not call them anything at all.
Yeah. Okay.
I just like anything that's about going and visiting Europe and having your vacation ruined by a cult is always good for me.
Yeah.
Plus, the actress who's in it was great in Little Drummer Girl. That's a great show if you're looking for a John le Carré adaptation.
I'm not, but
They shoot stuff. It's
Somebody out
cool.
there listening is so. Um, so I don't know. Call me crazy, but it looks Lovecraftian by the synopsis. I'll watch the trailer later tonight.
You shall see.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. Kirk says he saw Good Omens. You see all the episodes?
Oh yeah, I've done the whole. It got
I've
better.
watched like 7. It's like I go back and I watch a little bit when I am tired and I can't read, but it's not really grabbing me.
Nah, it's when I finished up the first 2 episodes, if you've ever heard that screenwriting rule of don't ever have narration in your movie, it's this big like textbook example of like why having a narrator jerks you around a lot as a viewer. I'm sympathetic though. Like, are y'all big Terry Pratchett fans? Have you read a lot of his books?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the fun like the narrator, the fun jokes and the observations and the quips, and when you're adapting him,
God is just not all that funny in this.
yeah, it's like when you're adapting him to the screen, it's like, do I try to keep those jokes in there or do I just have it be its own story? And they tried to keep the jokes. I don't know. It struggles.
The only thing that really grabs me at all from Good Omens is David Tennant's performance.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
A lot of fun being the Demon Crowley.
The way he slinks like a snake when he's walking.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I don't know. We were talking about this before the podcast started, but like as a book, it was kind of it's just a lot. There's like 4 or 5 different subplots that are tonally really different, and they can sneak by it with a book by keeping it light and interesting. But you go from like David Tennant saying something funny and British to like children walking around, and it's jarring. Yeah.
Someone on my
Who knew?
Someone on the live show is dissing Chevy Chase. I don't know how that came up, but this must be rectified. I like Chevy Chase. Fletch, great movie. You're muted, Pete. All right, ready for this? This is the most exciting news of all time, or at least this week.
You're pregnant?
No. Sigourney Weaver confirms she's reprising the role of Dana Barrett in Jason Reitman's Ghostbusters.
All right.
Yeah, and she says it's going to be crazy working with the guys again. Weaver told Raid.
What way?
Yeah.
Isn't Howard Ramis dead? Or
Yeah, but
Howard
I don't
Ramis
think
is
they're
dead.
all dead. But he could come back as a ghost, I'm sure, and work with the movie. The site notes that Weaver will parade. Yes, the site notes that Weaver will be reuniting with Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd. So I saw that and was like, "What? That's good news. That's really cool." What else do we have to talk about? I mentioned They Come Knocking earlier.
Yeah.
It's on Hulu. I really liked it. I've got a quibble or two that I really won't talk about because it would be a spoiler. But I thought they did a really good job. It's part of that Into the Dark movie series on Hulu. The only other one of those that I've seen, as I said, is The Body, and that was pretty good. So yeah, that one was sort of a dark comedy more than anything else. But They Come Knocking, I recommend it. I liked it better than Hereditary, let's put it that way. Ben should be here for this, but I'll say it anyway. Here is my little 60-second speech on why I canceled DC Universe. Swamp Thing has been canceled like 2 episodes in. And I've heard it's really, really good. And I also heard that, contrary to prior reports, it's not about taxes. I don't know what the hell DC Universe thinks it's doing, but if they think they're going to keep people by canceling a great show, they're not. And the other problem with DC Universe is they offer a lot of comics, like Comixology does. Okay, there's a Comixology Unlimited, like there's a Kindle Unlimited. Comixology Unlimited has a hell of a lot of DC comics now. Well, obviously, so does DC Universe. But if you've got just even a tablet, just a regular size small tablet, the pixelation, it's terrible resolution. There's no comparison to Comixology. So that was the second reason why I quit. And I don't know why they would be shocked that people are canceling DC Universe. So the three of you are looking at me like, who cares? But I'm sure somebody listening does. Yeah.
I'm just tired
Mike.
of spending extra money for extra sites. I mean, I have cable. Why the hell should I have to spend more money?
You need to get rid of cable. But then again, you have an AOL email address.
Yeah, Mike, I think there is competing rumors and disinformation stuff going on in all this. You know, apparently DC announced this week that they're canceling Vertigo.
What?
Yeah, their whole Vertigo line is being shut down.
Well, I think basically they're trying desperately to keep the comics going.
Well, yeah, so what I understand is that
The mainline comics going.
What I've heard is that AT&T, through the merger with Time Warner, which owns DC, is now in control. And AT&T did not want to deal with the whole adult comics issue. It doesn't want to deal with creator comics. And since they're planning on marketing their own pay-per-view or own streaming channel, they want to kill the one that exists.
So why did they start DC Universe in the first place?
Well, that started before AT&T took over. So
yeah, you're right. That makes a lot of sense.
This is the rumor I've heard, and it goes contrary to the taxes rumor.
I think the taxes rumor has been debunked. It's even been debunked by DC. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, all of this smacks of somebody new in charge.
Yeah, and Kelly Young pointed out how different this was than, say, Shudder is a good example. This is coming from Kelly Young, not me, of it being done right. The Shudder channel. Here's DC's response to this, and then we'll go on to another topic. But there are no current plans for a season 2, reads the statement. The full 10-episode season of Swamp Thing will continue to air on DC Universe, with new episodes released weekly. No current plans for a season 2. We appreciate there are questions as to why, but we are not in a position to answer at this time. There you go. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's smacks of somebody being in control and nobody knowing what's going on.
The statement continued, in which this makes absolutely no fucking sense. DC Universe continues to develop new shows, new seasons, new stories, new availability, and more platforms. But we're canceling a really good show like Swamp Thing, right? We've got a lot of exciting plans for our other shows in the works and look forward to sharing more in the coming months. Let me just condense all this to you for everyone to saying DC Universe will be shutting down at some point in the future. So it's, yeah, pretty amazing.
Well, I got
two items.
Yeah.
Any of y'all are fans of The Expanse on Amazon? There's an upbeat story. Canceled by Sci-Fi and resurrected by Jeff Bezos's insane quest to build a space platform.
What?
Great series.
This joke has two parts. The first part is The Expanse is this great sci-fi show. You should watch it. It's on Amazon Prime. It has a Lovecraftian space horror element to it. It's a really good show.
It does? I've only seen the first episode.
Oh, it's really good, Mike.
All right.
Yeah.
It's very well done, hard sci-fi.
Fantastic sci-fi, yeah.
But there's a Lovecraftian element?
Sort of. Well, it's just this messing with stuff he shouldn't be. I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, okay, I got you. All right.
So yeah, the first couple of episodes are a little bit like, why is Space Jon Snow talking to these people? It's a little strange, but once it gets going, man, it's good. Well, yeah, the poor actor, I feel bad because he didn't do anything to anyone, but he does look like Jon Snow in space. So getting to the point, though, the show gets canceled by Sci-Fi, and Jeff Bezos has this. He's on a mission to build a space platform so he can store goods to ship them around the globe, essentially, is like the loose plan. And he finds out about this canceled show because he's like wandering around some NASA Comic-Con thing and just buys it that day. Like he's like, well, I should make a show about, spaceships. And God bless him, because we're getting more Expanse now.
And there's he's got a laser platform for late payers.
Straight up. I mean, it's sort of like he is, I'll give him credit. It's a little more sane than I want to build a moon colony. But Jeff Bezos, if you want to build a big space station, man, shine on, you can crazy diamond.
Yeah, you can probably afford it. Isn't he the richest man in the world?
Look, yeah, it could be worse. It could be drugs. He could be buying drugs. Just, if you want to build a space station, fine.
Why would that be worse? Drugs are great. But you shouldn't do them, kids. Don't do drugs.
Anyway, so to tail end that story, Expanse Season 4 is supposedly coming out this year, and you should support that show. I hope Amazon sticks with it because the books are great and the show is really good too.
Okay, so just so everybody out there knows, it is a little over 10 weeks till Necronomicon in Providence. Passes are still available for those who want to take the plunge. Keep that on your radar. We'll probably have Nils on the show pretty soon, but
yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Okay, the second thing is, if you like foreign language mythos stories in translation, we've talked about how difficult these are to come by. Asamat's Ken just had his Cthulhu Reich released by Kuroda Press. These are stories that were written actually quite a few years ago, but they tell a story of Nazis and Shoggoths.
Okay. And the title again is what, and where can they get it?
You can get it off Amazon. Cthulhu Reich. Spell it with a K.
Cthulhu Reich. Okay. All right. Have you read any of them? Did you like them?
I am enjoying it. I'm not done with it, but I'm really enjoying it.
Okay. Yeah, this is something that Pete talks about quite a bit.
I really wish some press needs to be founded whose entire job is to just translate mythos fiction from foreign languages into English.
Jeff Bezos, are you listening right now?
Yeah.
From what I can see, because I get a lot of it in my Facebook feed from around the world, every English writer of mythos fiction could die, and we would still have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of stories, because there's just so much out there being done around the world, and we don't see a tenth of it.
Am I interpreting this right? You're starting a death cult?
Yes.
No, he said that all the English-speaking Lovecraftian writers are about to die.
I thought he said he wanted all of his competition to die.
Yes, of course.
Well, we better get the Fluffcraft on lockdown then. It is secured, guys. Lock it up.
Damn it! I gotta lock down that URL.
I think that there's is the Fluffcraft site about fluffies, or is it about fluffers?
Well, this is a real thing.
Okay. Is it linked to YouPorn?
This conversation is really devolving.
What?
Well, I don't know do you guys have anything else to talk about? Kurt, you finished the Charles Dexter Ward podcast. Really liked it.
I thought it was really neat. I was sad that they had to reschedule, and I really liked it. It's like 10 episodes long. They're like 20 minutes a pop usually. Great acting. And the thing that was so neat about it was most Lovecraft stories require being set in the 1920s for like both cultural but also like technology reasons. You can't have like a satellite photo of Antarctica. But this one really worked well in the modern setting. It was almost made better by the cell phones and the internet and like the context of a podcast as a kind of driving narrative. So I thought it was really good. The one criticism I had was they had one of those sections. I don't think I can spoil the story of Charles Dexter Ward. I'm assuming that we're all
Well,
familiar.
you can spoil the podcast version though. That would be possible.
There's one point where this is like a trope in historical fiction that gets on my nerves, so it's kind of just a thing that might just stick with me. But when to raise the stakes, you kind of start saying the villain is responsible for everything bad in history. So they'll be like, he's the reason the Holocaust happened and the Treaty of Versailles was signed and why the Egyptian plagues happened. And you're sort of like, you can just be a guy. It doesn't have to be Hitler's art studio buddy. Yeah, or whatever.
Hitler's art studio buddy.
Well, because
I think he painted houses, not paintings. Actually,
I was Hitler's roommate.
Yeah, Hitler's dorm roommate. Well, this is a big thing in the Twilight.
We went to different schools together.
In the Twilight books, they start saying that like vampires are responsible for slavery in America, and I was kind of like, whoa, Tiger, there's a lot of things going on there that
Wait, you just
You've read the Twilight books.
No.
You realize this people are listening to this, right?
It's just one of those things that's like maybe you shouldn't simplify like vast, complex human disasters into vampires needed bodies.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and you're not wrong. So
I got to say, Mike, I've listened to 2 of the podcasts. The first 2 episodes, it's great.
It
really
is
worthwhile.
And Kirk and I mentioned before the show, he was telling me what he just said here, and a lot of horror movies that worked in the 70s and 80s and so forth would not work today because of cell phones or and so on, the internet, whatever. But here, as you said, Kirk, I won't say makes it better, but it makes it really good, a really good reimagining of it. So
well, Dexter Ward was always one of his stories that was a little bit more of a strain as to like, why is this researcher clearly doing things that are dangerous, whereas with like the podcast it's a little bit more of
this is what we do.
Like trying to make a buck, and like they're like down on their luck podcasters kind of. It's pretty it holds. It's good.
Yeah. This third time I've mentioned They Come Knocking on this show, but there's an example of a modern horror movie, whether you like this movie or not. It's an example of a modern horror movie where, I can't stand it, the old trope of, they're running from the bad things or demons or stalkers or whoever, and the car won't start, or whatever, stuff like that, or they've got their cell phone, but for some reason inexplicably they can't make a phone call, but They Come Knocking, it's basically this guy takes his daughters on a road trip and they're way out in the desert. It's really, really isolated, and it's so isolated, it's very conceivable that the daughter can't get anything on her cell phone, any reception on her cell phone. So, watch it after dark. I thought it was a pretty good movie. Anything else, guys? Do we have anything else?
No, I have stuff that I need to talk with Matt about after we're off the air.
You have something you want to be mad about, you said?
Yes.
Okay. You can be angry.
We all want to be.
They're often resistant to penicillin now, Pete, but there are other drugs.
Yeah, that's sulfa.
Euphoric drugs, even. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. If you're not a Patreon supporter, please do so. Just Google Lovecraft eZine Patreon. The minimum is $5 a month, and it really keeps me going. Honestly, no kidding. I'm married to a school teacher, and I have no job because of illness. This is my job. So if you can become a patron and help me out, I'd appreciate it. What else was I going to say? Oh, next week we got Cody Goodfellow, which
Awesome. We won't have to say a word.
I know. I was about to say, I'm going to introduce and say, everyone, this is Cody Goodfellow, and then I'm just going to sit back and,
Dude,
right?
I do not have enough alcohol in the house
Yep,
to,
that's right.
to sit here and watch Cody for an hour.
Anyway, Cody is very entertaining for those of you out there listening who don't know. And then after that, as I mentioned, Laird, Barron, Paul Trimley, and John Langan are going to just be on the show and talk about whatever they want to talk about. So it's not going to be an interview. Those guys are going to be having a conversation. That's the goal. All right. Well, thanks, guys, for being on the show today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next week.